Hey there. Okay, we're live. We're ready to go. Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Finance and Administration meeting. We have a really packed agenda. So we could start with our Borough Manager update from Samantha, move from those agenda items. And I thought maybe when I introduce the item, we can just do round robin and I'll call in everyone just so we can at least get to 3 out of the 4, I'm hoping, in the next hour and 20 minutes. Sounds good. Okay, Samantha, if we can start with you with the Borough Manager update.
Sure. So given this my first meeting and given the volume of items on the agenda, I'm going to keep the update maybe a little bit briefer tonight, and then in the future, we'll add a little bit more onto it. So really for the, I've been here for, this is week 4 now. It's been a really great opportunity to really spend a lot of time getting to know residents in the borough, getting to know the staff and assessing the staff, starting to meet some of our consultants. Obviously spending time with members of Borough Council to get your, back information on what's going on in the borough and history on things. So it's really been a period of learning and assessment for the most part. Really been doing a lot of work on getting some things over the finish line that were started by, Sean and Matt. So a lot of infrastructure related things in particular. Maybe because that was the very first committee meeting I attended, but like things like the electric chargers, the bridge, the storm sewer project that council will talk about later tonight. So that's really been the bulk of the work that's been going on. It's been assessment. It's been updating borough records to reflect that I'm the manager. So like with the bank, with our other financial institutions, so on and so forth. So I'm really looking forward to, I think at this point going forward, the introductory meetings are going to start to die down a little bit. And, as I continue to learn more about the borough, I'll be in a better position as well to really move forward with all the goals that council has. And especially once we get the, vacant administrative and vacant public works positions sorted out as well. So that's really kind of a brief update on how the last 4 weeks have been.
Great. Thank you. Our first agenda item is to review and evaluate the comprehensive plan. And I'll just begin, if you can bear with me, just to share a screen so the public can see this as well. It's been a while. So you may remember that in the community-driven, community-authored comprehensive plan, that there's really a fantastic and a comprehensive review of the history, the data, and evaluation of the community thus far. And then there are really clear goals and recommendations embedded throughout all of those major categories and headings. So I pulled one up here just so you can see as an example to refresh everybody's memory and show the public. For example, it's really clearly stated, the goal is to foster community activities and programming in public space. There are clear recommendations and several goals under each of these different headings. Part of the comprehensive plan does call for it, again, not to die in a drawer, but it is a document that we will use as a North Star or as a mission statement and guide on where council and the community can expect to be going. And again, I think it's important to underscore for the public that this was a community-authored process that took several months to complete. So FNA has suggested that this really is perfect timing to evaluate the comprehensive plan, particularly with new leadership in the office, because it's an opportunity for us to review where have we come, where do we need to go, collect the evidence to suggest, have we met the goal, have we exceeded the goal, have we not yet reached that goal, and why? And Samantha, to your point in your update, I really think that gives you, the office and council, a really clear trajectory on what our priorities are and where we need to move. So I think the timing on this could not be more perfect. I would like to see us, I'm going to stop sharing for a second, unless anyone has any questions or comments about the comprehensive plan. Oh, Bob.
can't figure out how to rename myself here. Usually there's a tab in the upper right-hand corner of the box that says rename.
Oh, I can name you. What do you want to be called?
Bob Weisborn. Thank you.
Sure.
I'm not sure why it's not.
Yeah, so I disabled that just because I had some past Zoom meetings in my prior employment where people took advantage of that to do some unprofessional things. So sorry that I took that away from you.
It's nice for me because I share this Zoom with other people in my family. So yeah, thank you. So Cindy, I just wondered what the process will be for this review.
Sure. Well, I think that's what we can talk about. So I would like to suggest, and I'm going to share this again. Give me a second here. I'd like to suggest that we invite the comprehensive plan members, all of whom actually still reside in the borough, that we invite comprehensive plan committee members to evaluate the plan, and then we invite individual council members in the office to invite the plan, to evaluate the comprehensive plans. I'd like us to brainstorm on what we think is the best and simplest evaluation tool that will be both a summative and formative assessment. You know, where are we and where do we need to go? That then F&A can look at this aggregated data to say, let's then with the office identify priorities. I started a Word doc that I just thought I could take notes and we can discuss. Samantha, I'm really interested in your opinion on evaluation. I'm a fan of a simple Likert. I think anything beyond 5 becomes not useful. You know, we didn't meet the goal, we met the goal, we exceeded the goal. Easy. 0, 1, 2. You know, you could look at the median and the mean then. I think it's important for us to cite the evidence. So we're not saying things such as, yeah, I believe that we ... but rather we evaluate and can point to that data or evidence, and then some space for reflection or qualitative data to give context, extenuating circumstances for us to guide that data. Again, this was just a first place to start, but I'm interested in hearing from everyone on your thoughts on who should do the evaluation and what should the tool be.
Yeah, thank you for working to put this together. I mean, I think this could be a great start for us. And I think the process outlined getting, relevant people who are involved with certain sections to be involved could work out pretty well. Yeah, I mean, I think that if we go through almost each recommendation and it's either, did we do it or didn't we do it? And then, like you said, some opportunity for qualitative data to say, especially if we didn't do it. Well, if we're going to say we did it, then I think we need some concrete sort of thing to prove that we did it. And if we didn't do it, then I think there should be an opportunity to discuss why haven't we done it yet. And then for the things that we haven't done it, determine what needs to happen to move it to completed.
So there's a lot of points here, right? I mean, there's probably 100 to 120. So I don't know if we're going to be able to discuss in depth in a meeting every single point. There are priority items. So you didn't mark you didn't take in the sort of the priority. They set priorities of high, medium, and low for a lot of these goals. So I think definitely the high priority goals are worthy of a discussion. The other ones, maybe we just note where we are, and they may not need as much attention as some of the higher priority goals. I'm trying to think. I mean, there ought to be like an in progress too. I mean, there's some of these where we've started, but we haven't actually completed the task yet. I guess that's like a 3 or a 2.
Sure. I mean, we could do 1 through 3. Not done, in progress, goal met, exceeded, right?
And I wonder, I mean, I know that the people who are involved in drafting it will have opinions, but they may not know kind of where the borough is on some of these internal you know, things that are internal to the borough. They're not necessarily going to be up on the details. So I don't know how effective they would be at being able to score the borough accurately on a lot of these claims. I think it would have to be it would probably have to be borough council doing the scoring, just because we know more of what's going on. And, you know, Samantha as well, but on some of these initiatives, you know, we may be better informed. So I don't know.
So Fred, I think you bring up a great point, which actually underscores part of our communication plan, is that folks in the comprehensive plan may not know, you know, what council is working on, what the office is working on. And Samantha and I had discussed that once whatever this process looks like is finished, we really should use the opportunity to do kind of a town hall explanation meeting for folks to come and really understand what the evaluation data yielded. Does that, you bring up a good point.
I mean, I would say that I suggest that we do the scoring, and then the comprehensive plan members are there at the meeting, and they can, you know, if they disagree, or they can, you know, provide more context and just react to the scoring. But they, you know, they give us a reality check and say, no, this is not what we meant. But I think we're going to have to do the.
Okay. Bob, can I ask for comment?
Cindy, perhaps why don't you pick one right now, Cindy? And let's do the exercise so that we actually have some real-time experience doing one, because I think that'll inform a little bit this discussion in the moment.
Sure.
So
That's
just
a great
pick
idea.
one.
Okay, so, I'm just going to put what my screen is open to. So, and let's, to Fred's point, perhaps, you should all see this, goals and recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
Folks, okay, let's do 0, not met, 1 in progress, 2 met goal, 3 exceeded. I don't see.
So we're doing 0, 0, 1, 2.
0, 1, 2, 3. And I wish I don't see the chat function here. I would put it in the chat.
It's okay. Oh yeah, the chat's gone.
Here we go. Okay, you all should be able to see me annotate this.
I don't see the, oh, there. Yep. Great. Is there no more chat between participants?
Yeah, I'll double check the default Zoom settings, and I may need to turn that. May just, since I have a new Zoom account, that may have been disabled by default, and I just need to turn that back on.
Okay.
Okay, so you should all be able to see 0 not met, 1 in progress, 2 met goal, exceeded goal, and then we will ask. Oh, son of gun. See this? I hate this annotation on Zoom. Okay, so you should be able to see this. Just not in a great screen.
Good.
Okay.
Good.
Goal, fostering community activities and programming in public space. This may not.
That's a very timely. That's a very timely first one to start with.
Agreed. This is not the best given the pandemic. Maybe we can think back prior to.
Oh, let's do this. This is good.
So we're just going to go recommendation by recommendation here.
Yeah, let's do one.
Yeah.
Develop a mechanism for residents and community groups to reserve public space for events.
I would say that's
0.
a 1.
I would say we haven't done it. That's 0.
Okay, I think it's a 1.
Yeah, I would classify as either a 0 or a 1, because I know I've heard from Michelle Carroll that, you know, she's been wanting to look into creating a like online like web form where people can, you know, register for things, or if I understood her correctly, register for things without people like necessarily having to like call and schedule with her, sort of thing. And then also, of course, we'll talk a little bit maybe later in the agenda tonight. I've been working to try and figure out the, our use policies as we return from COVID. So there's definitely still a lot of work to be done on recommendation 1. It's definitely not a 2 or a 3.
And I guess the reason I gave it a 1 is because I think some of the form work has been created. Some of the written agreements have been authored and or at least exist in draft form. So some of those, some of that mechanism has begun.
I know. See, this is why I like small Likert scales, because it really could be a 0.5. I guess I would put it somewhere near a 1 in that prior to the pandemic, we did have John Walco craft user agreements for east-west rooms on 80 Windsor Ave. We additionally did review our New Horizons agreement for using the Borough Hall. We did, in fact, have a meeting scheduled for the Norbert Athletic League to understand what the process is for the Norbert Athletic Association to use the fields. We had asked Michelle Carroll and the office to please begin developing some sort of process and standard operating procedure for folks and groups to understand what space was available and how they needed to indemnify the borough, do they need to have insurance? So those conversations have started and really dropped since the pandemic. So that's the evidence I would cite for that 1.
So I think I would suggest maybe that if we put this up as a Google form that we could all work on, offline and just go through the, put up every recommendation, and then everybody gets a chance to put in their number and their evidence, number and then a space for evidence. And I'm willing to go through it. I don't know if everybody's going to have the time to go through it, but we really, if 2 or 3 people are willing to go through it all, that should be enough to work with.
And I guess, Cindy, I wanted to add that I think Fred's point that this is really most relevant for council members to go through is, I agree with that. I think that trying to reconvene the people who gave so much of their time to create this document, and then ask them to evaluate, they would need so many questions answered that it would be a lot of time. And these are still early days yet for this document. It's really just brand new.
I agree with you. I think the example that we just gave is just supports Fred's claim that folks would not understand that. Perhaps it's more appropriate then for once council to do this, that if we do have some sort of town hall, that we ask the comprehensive plan members to come and maybe give an opening, a context, and just really kind of co-facilitate with us. That may be the more appropriate role for folks.
Sounds good.
Okay.
I want to second Fred's idea of doing some kind of a Google Doc as a way to capture our thoughts.
That's fine. Did the 0, 1, 2, 3 metric, did that work for you all, or would you like to revisit that?
That's fine. It works well. It works well.
So to Fred's point, then I will extract the high priority and quantify what we're looking at.
You can list every item, but also have a field that's the priority, I think,
okay.
So that we can focus on that if we're time limited.
Okay. I would like to put a due date on this just so we can all keep on track and it does not get lost. If I can have the Google sheet, or we could, Samantha, we should talk because we might be able to do this in Teams. But whatever online technology we decide to use in 2 weeks, do you think having this by our August meeting is realistic?
2 months, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah,
I think so.
Plenty of time.
Okay, I think I wouldn't want to just sit down by myself and do it. I'd probably like to join with 1 or 2 other people and kind of walk through it. If anybody, if you're open to that, Fred, because
sure.
I think discussing a few of these things sometimes jogs the memory and kind of helps in fleshing out.
No more than 3,
That's
right?
fine. No more
Yeah,
than three.
I agree. And I'm trying to think, we probably wouldn't have the time to do this at an F&A meeting because it would take hours. But if folks, it would be really interesting, I think, for the public to see us debate what we just did. But perhaps we save that for a review. Okay, so I will, Samantha, you and I can come up with what's the easiest technology to use. I'll go through and extract and create whatever that form is with the goal of having council in 2 weeks. We will ask council to have that by August with the goal of maybe our fall meet and greet. Perhaps it can be this kind of review of comprehensive plan, and I'll reach out to comprehensive plan members, committee members.
Sounds great to me.
Fred, Bob, how's it sound? Okay. The next, one sec, I'm sorry. So the next issue on our agenda item is then the manager performance review and process. And we also need a manager ordinance update. And Samantha, I'll ask you to speak on that. The reason why we're doing this now is we will evaluate Samantha or any borough manager. I mean, this should be, again, a standard operating procedure is that after 6 months of employment, we should really evaluate the manager before the 1 year formal evaluation and any compensation review. But it's not fair to evaluate someone on things that they don't know that is their goal or they're being evaluated on. So I sent you all a sheet that Dave provided on. I asked, is there a standard borough manager evaluation form? Is there a best practices document that F&A can create and work from? And he sent what you should all have, and I will include it in our meeting packet, is really just strengths, weaknesses. Has the manager met his or their priorities? We hand it out to individual council members. One person takes that evaluation, again, aggregates the data, and that is used as the evaluation tool. So I emailed you all, and you should have handy both the borough manager job description and then Dave's just general form. But I wanted our committee to talk about this so Samantha is really clear on what we'll be using in January to evaluate her. Bob? You're muted.
Yeah, I think that a good adjunct or maybe a foundation for this particular kind of more qualitative review would be something quantitative based on the bullet points in the manager's job description. So for example, if you go to the job description, it says, say, under financial management, develop annual operating capital budget. Like that gets either that's done or that's not done. And it's done, exceptionally well, pretty well, marginally well. We have some kind of way of maybe a Likert scale for evaluating each of those bullet points so that it's not just an abstraction. Mm-hmm. To me, the job description is a great place to start. Mm-hmm. What do you think of that, Samantha?
Yeah, I would definitely, I think that makes a lot of sense, Bob.
There's a lot of bullet points, and some of them are less important than others. So I think you might want to slim that down to, 7 or 8 points rather than 30 tasks and responsibilities. Because manage permitting processes. We're not going to have a lot to say about that necessarily.
Well, it's either been done or it hasn't been done. If it hasn't been done, well, then that's a red flag. But I think it's okay to touch each bullet. You don't necessarily have to go into depth.
Right? This might be an example where we could use that same Likert scale. It hasn't been done. It's in progress. The manager met the goal. The manager exceeded the goal, and provides
precisely.
But, even we're not going to know all of these things. We're not going to be able to provide an informed opinion. So I think just having some higher level ones. You know,
I think it's reasonable to ask for the manager also to provide a mirrored review based on the same item, and that way you get sort of a sense of like, oh, so you gave that a 5, you exceeded the goal. Why did you give it a 5? Maybe there's something we didn't know about that happened that really informs our assessment of the manager, because things do happen that most of what happened actually goes unobserved by the council or by the residents. And so it's also a great way of educating ourselves about what's happening.
Yeah, to Bob's point, yeah, the way it worked with my prior employer was I was generally expected to give, like, you know, and whenever I wanted any sort of merit-based raise or anything like that, the onus was on me to present to Borough Council, you know, what additional value I was providing for them. And it really almost is more like they kind of put the burden on me to almost evaluate myself and then, you know, present to them as to, you know, what that entailed. So to Bob's point, I think it could be good for council, given again that you all don't know every little thing that I'm doing, that for me to have some sort of presentation component or self-assessment component for you all. So that way, otherwise I'm not like every council meeting and every manager report, you know, listing every little accomplishment to make sure you all know for the end of year review.
Fred, any other comments before?
I mean, I like the original idea of just a simple form. I would be, and you know, I hear what Samantha's saying as well, that, you know, we should let her tell us, you know, things that she's done that we may not necessarily be aware of.
Maybe what the process could be is something like, you know, sometime in like October or November of each year, like I give, you know, a presentation to you all on what I think, you know, my accomplishments have been for that year or that time period. And then after you've heard that from me, you can decide, you know, you can do the evaluation form and decide like which things you thought that I've done have been really good and important. And honestly, I don't think I'm biased. I wouldn't expect myself to BS, but like, honestly, if you all think I'm overstating something or have worked on something that doesn't really meet the goals of the borough or my job description, then I think it's also fair for you as council to be like, well, does Samantha really get credit for that? Or does Samantha get 100% credit for that, or what have you?
So I like that idea. So hearing what you're all saying, I wonder if I create a form from the job description, why don't we do an A and a B, a really detailed with a quick score? 1 is not applicable. I'm not even able to answer this, which I suspect half of those would be not applicable, with a quick Likert scale. And then a version B, which is much simpler with kind of some higher order. Samantha, we ask you to fill that out first and present that at the 6-month review, incorporating your idea of kind of almost the onus of responsibility also on you to demonstrate to us what you've been doing. And then council can take that back after hearing what you're saying, and either complete that Likert scale or really move to what Dave suggested, which I can pull up. I'm sorry, if you give me 1 second here, just so the public can see this. It might be helpful for council then to, Fred, to your point, to kind of zoom out and say, okay, we've now heard from Samantha. She's really walked us through that borough manager job description and the quantitative form evaluation tool we will have created. After hearing from her, we use the evaluation tool that Dave suggested, which saying, okay, what are the strengths that we've heard from our borough manager in the last 6 months? Where are we identifying weaknesses? And then what are those priorities for the future? So really we're incorporating both a quantitative evaluation tool and more of a qualitative one that post presentation from the manager.
I'm drawn to that kind of a hybrid. That sounds excellent, Cynthia. Let's try that in October, and then tweak it from there for the following year.
Samantha, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I'd feel good about that. And the timing actually works out pretty well because with the nature of borough code, like you all have to reappoint me as part of reorg. So, so I think that'll be great timing for me to present near the end of the year. And then just part of the budget process and part of that reorg process, at the end of each year to present. And obviously, if you all want me to, if you want to do a performance evaluation more often, you all certainly reserve the right as Borough Council to do that.
I think we would do a yearly. I mean, that's what we've done traditionally. I do think that given any new employee, a 6-month review really just is helpful for everyone involved in the organization, but certainly is not something that I would recommend that we do other than annually after this year. Okay, so next meeting, I'll have that evaluation tool, quantitative tool, and we'll create some sort of package for a standard operating procedure. Wow, this meeting's going a heck of a lot faster than I had anticipated. Wow. Okay, so, oh, wait, Samantha, I'm sorry. Can you talk about the manager ordinance update though? Thanks.
Yeah, so I've had a chance to take a look at Norbert Burroughs manager ordinance, and it's far less detailed than other manager ordinances that I've seen. So I would like, the Borough Council to consider updating the ordinance. It is very vague about my specific responsibilities, and it doesn't really match up very well with the job description that exists for the position. So I would encourage Borough Council to consider making the manager ordinance match up better with the job description. There's also some quirks that don't really follow Borough Code in it. For example, the manager ordinance has me reporting to the mayor, and I love our mayor. She's really great. But Borough Code is, kind of clear that I report to Borough Council is who that I report to and am responsible to. It also, in regards to things like hiring and firing, it is very vague. And I've seen language in other ordinances that strikes a good balance between council oversight and, giving the manager the power to appropriately run the borough, that I'd be willing to distribute to, whoever all I need to consider.
Thanks. I'd like to just suggest that I email all of this to John Walco and ask him to please draft a new ordinance for our review next month. Oh, Fred, you're muted.
I'm sorry. Did you send out the draft, or was I meant to have reviewed this? I didn't.
No, I didn't send out the original, although it should be on SharePoint. I mean, we need the borough code to match our manager ordinance for sure. And we certainly want to update the job description so it's consistent with our ordinance.
Well, wait a minute. So we're talking about updating what's in borough code, about updating our I'm looking at it now, powers and duties of the manager. I know that we changed the we changed the language on it, so it's no longer he shall or he shall. We've put inclusive language throughout the code, so this hasn't been updated. I'm not sure if there are any other changes that we've made.
Yeah, and just with the online code, just as a point of information, what happens is generally annually, the company that runs the online code takes all the ordinances that we've sent to them and updates the code with it. So I actually just, I'm in the process of signing off on them updating the code. So in the next month or so, I'd expect to see all that updated.
So I'd like to suggest that we ask John Walco to take a look at that and make sure that, again, our ordinance is not conflicting with PA Borough, and that our job description is consistent with that, with our own manager ordinance as well, and then give us a draft to review next month.
Yeah, I'd like to hear what the proposed changes are, obviously, before approving or disapproving.
Sure. Okay. I will email him and update everybody on that.
Why don't we just let's look at the draft as a committee before it gets presented to council.
Sure. I'll ask him to have a draft for us at our next FNA meeting. We can comment and then bring, either approve or make changes and bring to council. Perfect.
Thank you.
And then the next, Samantha, I'll ask you to speak on. It's the American Rescue Plan funds that we should hopefully anticipate around 400,000.
Yeah, so the borough has actually been approved for an allocation of about $450,000 from the federal bill that was passed a few months ago. So 2 weeks ago, we heard from the State Department of Community and Economic Development, DCED, as to the process to applying for the funds. The way it's structured is that we get half of the funds relatively soon, and the other half of the funds about 1 year from now. And then by 2024, we have to have spent the funds for their intended purpose. And around that period, we have to give an accounting to the, to the higher powers in government about what we spent the money on to make sure it was spent in accordance with the regulations on it. So I'll get to those regulations in just a second. In terms of us actually getting the money, I've worked in taking care of pretty much all the paperwork we needed to submit to DCD. I had a conversation with them today. There's one outstanding item. It's actually called a SAM registration. And I actually forget what that acronym stands for now, but it's something the federal government has for when you're getting money from the federal government. The borough previously had a registration that expired, and before I can renew our registration, they have to update our entity administrator because it expired like back in 2013. So I'm going to update that, get it submitted. We should get our first half of the money in the near future. The more important thing for this committee is in my opinion, once we've received the funding, is that we need to determine what to do with it. The regulations for it lay out some very specific uses for it. So one use for it is a municipality is allowed to recoup revenue losses attributable to COVID-19. And there's a specific formula provided to determine what that eligible amount would be. I haven't had a chance yet to run that formula for Norbert and determine, what that amount might be, but I could definitely, find that out by our next FNA meeting. Also, another potential use for it is for broadband, sewer, and water infrastructure projects. I do know the borough has, talking to the borough engineer, there are a number of sewer projects that probably need to be done sooner than later in the borough. I'm not sure if stormwater or storm sewer is included, so I want to get some clarification on that, because I know that's also another big need for the borough. And then the other uses that have been laid out for it aren't really directly borough related. They're things like providing money to like private businesses to pay essential workers. A lot of things where it wouldn't really be like money for the borough. And I get a little bit concerned that when the government is giving out money to private entities, like how do you do that in a fair way? And so I would probably advise the borough to maybe stay away from that part, especially given our revenue needs, and B, the sewer and water and storm sewer needs that we have. So that's at least my gut reaction is whatever we can get for revenue recoup, let's maximize that. And then from the funding that's remaining, try and use it for sewer and, if eligible, storm sewer projects.
So the revenue recoup would go into just the general fund budget?
It would, yes.
Okay, that does seem very flexible. I think we're waiting on a project to scope out some of the sewer lines before actually working on any projects, but within a year or so we should be ready to go on those, I think.
Yeah, I'm meeting with the borough engineer and the borough public works foreman next Thursday afternoon to talk about where that's at and keep that moving forward.
It would be great if we could use some of those funds on sewers. I mean, that's some of the least exciting projects, but yet some of the most necessary. So if that could even help put a dent in our sewer needs, that would be fantastic, in my opinion. Bob, any thoughts, comments? No, for the good of the group? Okay, then Samantha, you'll just keep us posted on those earmarks. I agree with you, by the way, in saying I personally would feel uncomfortable trying to equitably allocate funds to private institutions, particularly when we have such infrastructure needs. So I appreciate that recommendation.
We might be able to reimburse ourselves for money that we already gave for COVID needs to the businesses. I think we matched NVA contributions, right?
We did.
Yeah, you would be allowed to use the money for that as well. Any expenses that you did for COVID that weren't already reimbursed by the FEMA money that was given out last year. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great point, because we did give the $12,000 was used for the NBA to do a grant matching program for COVID relief projects, infrastructure projects. Great.
All right, so what I will do by the next meeting is I will complete what we need to complete to actually get the money. I will find out whether it can be used for stormwater, and I will determine the specific amount we can use for revenue recouping from COVID-19.
Perfect. Thank you, Samantha. The next point is actually one that we discussed as a priority when we were looking for a borough management, and that was really developing an aggressive grant strategy and process. That's one that F&A held off on, particularly after we were able to hire Samantha, because she has such an impressive record in acquiring grants, and saying, how can we as a council help leverage the resources of our community, support and assist as council members, and set up really a process that strategically identifies grants. And we had talked about, do we apply for grants that are tied to our comprehensive plan, to our capital budget? So we're not essentially, throwing the spaghetti against the wall, but rather there's a really clear and identifiable process for grants. Samantha, you are for sure the expert in the room. I know you and I have talked about just initially this when we've met individually. Just the other day, Samantha and I met with Ed Ridgway, council president, and Samantha said, oh, did your businesses apply for the facade grant matching program, which we had not ever heard of, and really pointed to how I would like, Samantha, you to comment on a grant strategy where council and community can support to really leverage the resources to meet the needs of Norbert.
Sure, I'd love to. So yeah, I mean, I was, in my prior employment had less revenue than Norbert Borough does, and so it was really important to use grants to leverage the things going on there. And just so the public knows, I mean, the budget where I was at before was about $2 million a year, and over the time that I was there, more than $2 million in grants were awarded. And I by no means was the only person involved in that. I like to think I played a very large role in it, but speaking to, I think Cindy said, I think there's a lot of opportunity and involvement for members of the community. And I think that's really important, because to be competitive for grants, you have to show that the community is really behind what you're doing. You have to show almost, I think I heard mention, tying things to the comprehensive plan. You have to show you've really kind of, thought through the project that you want to get funded. And it's not just someone woke up one day and said, oh, there's a grant, let's figure out something we can get money from for it. It has to be a project that doesn't necessarily have to be shovel ready, but it needs to be as close as possible to it to be as competitive as possible. And one of the other things for the borough to think about that started popping up more and more on especially state grant applications, there's an item called the PA Sustainability Certification. And it's an overall evaluation of how your borough is doing in terms of like environmental sustainability, financial sustainability. I mean, every aspect of sustainability you can think of. And it goes from bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. And I forget what I think if you've at least done it, have got at least bronze, you get bonus points on your grant application with the state. So it's great. We have a recent comprehensive plan. From what I've seen, we have a great, pool of community folks who are willing to chime in on things. And I think we have a lot of great community partners that we could leverage for letters of support and technical assistance with grants. They love seeing letters of support. That's really important to have. So I think really the biggest things we're missing, like I said, are maybe getting the sustainability certification done for the borough, as well as what I would propose that I could put together for you all is a grant calendar, if you will. And I can kind of lay out for you what just a simple spreadsheet laying out, who provides the grant, what matching requirements the grant has. Very few grants are, nowadays, almost all grants are 50-50 programs where, the borough would have to pay 50% of the cost of the project. The grant would cover 50%. And then just a general brief, one sentence explanation of what the grant can be used for, and then what the application period is. And I think if you go from that, once you have a sense of what the most common municipal grants are, then I think you can start matching up projects from your comprehensive plan with it. I think it's also a process of really keeping your ear to the ground and really taking advantage of networking opportunities and really taking advantage of connections. So an example I'll give is there was a gentleman from the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources who gave a speech at the university near where I worked at before. And I went, A, because I was genuinely interested in the topic he was speaking on, and B, at the end of what he talked about, I introduced myself to him and all that. And then 6 months later, the town I was working for had to apply for a grant from DCNR that he was one of the point of contact people on. I think it's also really important to work with not just your community groups, but your state and federal and county legislators. Having their support on a project makes is important to have. So I think the first two steps I'll propose for us are to work on the sustainability certification and for me to provide you with this grant calendar and kind of general overview of what all's out there.
I can tell you that the Achieve Platinum certification under the Sustainable Pennsylvania Community Certification Program is on our comprehensive plan. So,
okay, great.
There we go. You're totally
yeah. I will admit I did
on topic.
I read the comprehensive plan right when I interviewed for the position here, but I have not had a chance to really look at it since then. So it's absolutely something I need to get back to. And the exercise Cindy proposed at the very beginning of the meeting, I think will be helpful for me on multiple levels.
I think if you wanted to work with the EAC, if you needed any assistance on that, they would be totally, it's in their wheelhouse.
Yeah, I would love that, because something like that is something that volunteers are definitely qualified to work on with some support from staff. And that will be a huge help to me as I try to do the other things the borough needs to get done.
I think a great example of that is the bike grant that Michelle and Kimberly wrote for the Fix-It station. I mean, really, Kimberly Busick, the director of the Norbert Cycling Club, had all of the context and the background and was able to really put a huge dent in that with Michelle and then hand it over to the office. So I'm thrilled to hear that you're open for that. What I think, Fred and Bob, you interrupt me if I'm not representing us. I think that I want to find the balance so the office is supported and understands our desire to aggressively apply for grants, and yet you're not bombarded with 7 council folks saying, look at the grant that we found. How do we support the office in doing this? And how do we then serve as allies who, while you begin to meet folks and organizations in the community, are able to say, Fred, to your point, oh my gosh, the EAC, we have anything with environmental stewardship, we can really rely on that group of folks who are experts professionally to write that background and narrative piece for us. So it's the balance of wanting to help and support and not inundating the office.
Yeah, I think like you mentioned, I mean, where something that did work out well, where I was at before, for some grants, they were primarily written by by a borough volunteer. And it would just be like before it was submitted, I would do, a final review on it to make sure everything made sense. There were some grants, definitely where I was the primary author, and then I would have one other person, do a basic sanity and grammar check on it. And yeah, I mean, I think involving the volunteers in the grant writing process where we can at the level it makes sense to are good. Something else that helped, because you're right, especially at certain times, there were people who are like, we need to apply for this grant and this grant and this grant. I think what we need to do is there needs to be some sort of maybe I don't know if you all want it at this level or at the council level, but somebody to say like, hey, so and so is interested in us applying for this grant. Do we think this is a good idea or not? Before staff and volunteer time is spent on it.
Would you want this committee to maybe, I don't want to use the word gatekeeper because that almost sounds a little, but maybe review, first level review, if another council person or a community member has an idea for a grant, perhaps F&A can do that initial mapping where we need to be able to say, okay, this ties to this point of our comprehensive plan, or this is reflected in our CIP here. Maybe there are some thresholds, there's a certain time period where there has to be whatever that appropriate date is for the application process. And once we kind of rubber stamp it, it moves to the next process, which may be the office, it may be council.
Yeah, I would think that, I guess what I would envision, like you said, not gatekeeping, but maybe making sure that any grant application, like I said, maybe it's a certain set of criteria in advance, like either has to tie in with the comp plan or the capital improvement plan. Where's the matching funds going to come from? What level of priority is the project? And as long as it meets some quantitative threshold, then that empowers, staff and volunteers to work on it. Because then ultimately, before you can do a final application for any grant, you almost always have to have a resolution from Borough Council approving it. So I'd envision some sort of checklist or some sort of quantitative review by F&A just to make sure it's not something off in the woods, off the beaten path sort of grant. And then staff and volunteers work on it and then present it to Borough Council for final approval before it's actually submitted.
Thoughts, Fred and Bob?
Sounds great.
Yeah, Bob, we're all smiling. I think we all look a little giddy, which is exciting. Samantha, I would be curious if you and I then can meet, or the office can meet on, is there a way to streamline this in teams? And I don't know how you all plan to organize teams, but I don't even know what apps we have available to us, to be honest, but I know in my day job, there is a project function where you could almost submit this, a community member, a council member could submit this, we would get a notification that something had been submitted. We could initially do that criteria checklist, review an F&A, make a recommendation on whether or not it goes to council or the office.
Yeah, we could definitely get together and I could show you how some of that functionality could work.
Okay. Fred, Bob, is that okay? I'm walking away from this meeting with a set of deliverables for you all to review, whether it be evaluation tools, criteria checklist, and technology. Yeah, 2 evaluation tools, one for the comprehensive plan, one for the borough manager, a criteria checklist, and software functionality for a grant process.
I've never used Teams, but hopefully it's intuitive. We'll see.
Yeah, and
I don't have a
in
problem
the
with it.
future, I know I've been promising this for like 2 weeks, but I swear, like either by the end of this week, or early next week, I'm gonna give council access to Microsoft Planner, and I'll have a little tutorial on how that works.
Thanks. I don't love Teams, and I don't think it's intuitive, but hopefully you all have better luck than I do. But it's whatever.
I might need a little help, but yeah.
I think we'll probably all need a little bit of help. But and maybe it's not Teams, again, whatever the office is going to use, but again, to have some place where it's identifiable, it's accessible, we can look back historically to see, it's, at least in my field, you can reuse narratives and data, you don't always have to reinvent the wheel. I also think it's important to understand what we have applied for and maybe not received. Whatever technology that is to organize that, Samantha, you can let us know. Okay. Wow. Okay, this was a lot to accomplish. I think that we are done. Then the information items for discussion. Samantha, if there are no other comments, do you want to talk us through the action items for Borough Council?
Sure, absolutely. So I wasn't sure what the format for this committee was. I mean, pretty much all the items we're going to talk about are in the council packet. So I didn't want to necessarily double send the same items. So just to talk through them briefly. So minutes and scheduled bills, that's, pretty straightforward. I don't know, do you all do any motions or anything with that, or we just move on to the next? Okay.
Well, we moved to approve the schedule of bills, but that's and to approve the minutes, but those are in the full council. Sorry, not now.
Okay,
Yeah.
Gotcha. Great. All right, and then with the building reopening plan, so I prepared a memo for Borough Council that I also wanted to make sure you all were familiar with. The high points on that are basically, with the mayor's emergency order rescinded, the borough, is moving back towards having things be more business as usual. So, the basketball courts are open, the park is open, the library is open. So it kind of feels, like time to get the office back open. So basically what I'm proposing is that starting on Monday, the office will be open in the mornings from 8 to 12. And the main reason for that is honestly because of the borough's staffing situation at the moment. I think by the end of the summer, once that's in a better place, then I think then we could go back, to our 8 to 4. But at least by doing 8 to 12, it overlaps with the hours that our tax collector already keeps, as well as the hours in the past that our zoning officer kept for public meetings. So that's kind of what I was wanting to prioritize right now. And then let's see here. And then something council is going to have to talk tonight about is the governor's order was also revoked by the state legislature. So council will have to determine, how to handle public meetings after tonight. And then finally, for use of borough facilities, as we kind of talked about the comprehensive plan, the borough has spent a lot of time trying to figure out the appropriate facility use agreements and policies and procedures. And I do feel like there's still some work to be done on that front. And I would rather get that sorted out before we go back to a system that maybe wasn't fully where it should be. Because once we restart the old system, I think it's going to be so much more difficult to implement any changes if we do decide to make any changes. So for now, I'd rather just keep use of our public spaces to a minimum until we've made those determinations.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with Samantha. There were tremendous issues with safety issues with the building. I think you're spot on, is why we should be very cautious about reopening with a system that we knew didn't work.
Are you going to be asking people to wear masks in Borough Hall when they enter, or?
Yeah, for the time being, we would be. There's some for the time being, yes.
I have a question that I think is for John Walco, though, because you could not do Zoom meetings prior to the pandemic per PA Borough Code, I believe, which is why when we would go to webinars from the state organization, there was the call-in number versus the webinar number. So I'm wondering if something has changed, so there could be some sort of hybrid Zoom approach, or if we're still bound to phone only.
Sure, I think that was maybe less of a function of PA Borough Code and more of a function of people just not being familiar with the technology. because Borough Code explicitly says that telecommunication devices can be used as long as you can be heard and you can hear other people, and as long as a quorum is physically present. So what I'd like to what I'll be throwing out to council later tonight, and I'll go ahead and, spoil the surprise for you all now, is proposing that we do a hybrid model where instead of you all doing Zoom at your homes, you would just be all doing Zoom in the meeting room. And then, if anyone from the public wanted to attend in person, they'd be welcome and they could come over to my laptop or something if they needed to make a, public comment or ask a question or anything like that. And I think that would allow people to it would allow us to comply with Borough Code of having a quorum physically present in a physical meeting space, and also allow members of the public who may be otherwise unable to attend in person to still watch the meeting and participate in it.
Yeah, I think there's I think you probably thought this through, Samantha, but just some of the technical stuff, like that we would probably want to use the telephone system that's in the borough chambers for audio purposes. And then each individual council member could bring their own laptop or an iPad or even a phone to do the video portion of at their own seat. We could each individually do our video at our own seat through our own laptop or through our own phone. So there's really what I like about the idea, Samantha, is that you're not proposing that we purchase or use any brand new technology. This hybrid model works entirely with the technology we have. I do wonder though, if for the purposes of the public who will come to the meeting, if the borough might have an extra laptop that you could put out at the end of the table so that kind of maybe the camera goes to who's in the audience, and then if somebody does want to speak, they would come and stand at that laptop. And the second idea would be, could we use the large monitor that's in the borough that the borough has to actually create a real-time screen when we're in the meeting of the entire group? Like, I think it's called gallery view. Yeah, gallery view.
Yeah, unfortunately with the large monitor, it was brought to my attention that was not the property of the borough and it's no longer at the borough office. So we would need to get a new large monitor. Sorry to drop a surprise on you all there, because that's definitely not my goal during a meeting. I apologize. I thought you all might have been aware of that. So we can definitely look into getting a borough-owned large monitor and secure it so that it can't find a new home on its own. But otherwise, I think that's good, because you're right. If we don't have the conference phone dialed into the Zoom meeting, then you're going to get feedback on everyone's computers when people are talking. So, and in terms of a laptop, I'm not sure, but I could take a look at that. Worst case scenario, we could get like the cheapest iPad out there, to do basically what you're saying.
Samantha,
one of us could bring an extra maybe, but there's sometimes we use those Chromebooks, which are pretty inexpensive.
Samantha, prior to hearing that the TV that was gifted then ungifted, I was going to suggest, Bob, to your point, we had discussed prior to the pandemic, the council room got new carpet and chairs and tables, and what really was left was a really kind of antiquated projector. There was no way to share or project presentations. So we had discussed mounting some sort of visual with, again, some 21st century projector that made public viewing of documents a little bit easy as well. So perhaps even F&A, if there is hardware that needs to purchase to bring us in our post-pandemic world and catch us up just on presentations, perhaps that's something F&A can take a look at if you need council approval for additional funds.
Yeah, I'll definitely look at one of the biggest tasks I have for myself over the next couple of weeks is really getting familiar with the borough's financial situation now that I have access to all of our accounts and all that, and really getting a good handle on that and starting to develop some good recommendations for the 2022 budget as well as kind of seeing where are we, so far this year.
Okay, thanks. If there's not any other comments, we can move on to just a quick review of what we're going to discuss at 7:30 with 3.3 and 3.4.
Sure. So with 3.3, the 32 Sabine Avenue project, basically what happened with that one is the review letters from the county as well as the borough were not completed in time for the planning commission to review it for, this is my understanding. Michelle Carroll has really kind of like been the planning and zoning czarina for me the last 4 weeks. There's a memo included with council to better explain what it is, but I believe there was a timing issue with review letters that prompted a request for an extension. And so I would recommend in favor of it, given that it was the county and boroughs, fault that an extension is needed as opposed to the applicants. And then with 3.4, as you all may know, 2 weeks ago at the council workshop meeting, the chair of our planning commission, Todd Bressy, gave a presentation on the historic district ordinance and where that's at. Council provided some feedback to him. The planning commission met last week to talk more about it. A draft ordinance was provided to the borough solicitor, and the borough solicitor had a number of comments and questions that he's been in the process of discussing with the chair of the planning commission. And so tonight, the chair of the planning commission and the borough solicitor are going to update council as to where they're at with those discussions, see about getting further feedback from council, and determine if we're at a point yet where it makes sense to advertise the ordinance.
Great. Thank you. Bob, Fred, if you don't have any comments, we'll move on. Okay, seeing no one from the public, I think we can end F&A and have 15 minutes till our next full council meeting. Thanks all. Okay, thanks all. See ya.